Hi, this is Dan. Thanks for checking in on Dimgaard again. Special thank you to everyone who backed Volume 25 on Kickstarter, as well as the Patreons who make this all possible. We should be getting ready for another round. I expect to launch Volume 26 there on Friday. But in the meantime, I'm going to try to knock out some of these questions. I've been getting a pretty good response, and so I hope to get those done quickly. I'm going to try to be efficient in my answers. So this comes from Josh. I'm actually quite familiar with Josh. Josh was a player in various campaigns that I've ran over time online. And he says, his question is, I was wondering if you could talk about the different extra-planar entities that you include in Dimgaard. Why do you include them, and do you prefer to use ones in D&D already, or ever make up your own ones? So there are issues when you have like iconic extraplanar entities. So, for example, in the Drow Conspiracy, it concludes with the possibility, in fact, the probability. Most well-equipped parties achieve this, that they will imprison Lolith. And imprisoning Lolith has ramifications throughout the cosmos, right? And if a DM is utilizing a different setting than Dimgaard, then incorporating such a broad-ranging set of consequences can be difficult for them. You know, that their setting may not, if they're using, for example, one of the planescape settings, and then trying to align that consequence with their future play may be difficult. But I do prefer to do that, right? So I do prefer to make a statement. I wasn't afraid to include Lolith there. And especially because Lolith suited that campaign, right? It's really hard to imagine a Drow-centered campaign having a climactic episode and it not be centered around Lolith, right? You kind of make that decision when you say, I'm going to do a Drow campaign that's going to go up to 20th level and above. You just can't. It becomes the elephant in the room if there is no Lolith exposure there. And that's also true of the campaign that I'm just launching, which centered around the Blood War. And so the Blood War, if you're going to head to 20th level, which is what we're going to do, and you can't avoid Asmodeus, right? You can't avoid him in some capacity. You can't avoid at least some of the demon lords, Dimgaard or Orcus or Gratz, right? So if we were to do so, it would be extremely noticeable. So I don't shy away from using those that have an iconic history, a significant history, but I do try to be careful with it, so that I don't disturb the historic balance. But there are times whenever I'm very comfortable creating my own entity. So the one that comes immediately to mind is Arethysia. Right? So Arethysia was wholly a creation of Dimgaard. Right? We have hags. So that was the ultimate foe in Fae Secrets. And we have hags, right? And hags are Fae. But if you look at both the Seelie and Unseelie court with the Raven King and Titania, they're not really suitable as the nemesis for a hag-focused campaign. So I looked quite a bit for an established deity or established archfey and couldn't find one. Ultimately, I created my own, and I I drew on that some inferences, because hags and a number of other notable ugly and evil fae don't really fit into either of the courts. Which even the Seelie and the Unseelie court, they require substantial beauty from the courtiers, where hags would just not to be welcome there, as well as things like corrids or red caps, maybe a little more so. But anyway, there's a whole host of ugly fae, and so you got to ask yourself, out there in the Feywild, who's running that crew, right? And how would that archfae's psychology have led to the development of these ugly fae, as her, or his, it could have been a him, but it turned out to be a her, has her preferred minions. So I was pretty happy with the storyline that Arethysia took, and her philosophy evolved significantly as the story progressed, right? Because to reminisce, her philosophy was that beauty is inherently corruptive, right? That if you have inherent beauty, then you have the ability to drain resources off of the society and culture around you without putting in the legitimate effort and contributing to that culture, right? That ugly creatures inevitably, in order to make their way through the cosmos, have to significantly contribute, in a substantial way, in order to garner the resources that are necessary for them to thrive, and that's a much more noble state, a much more. And then she was personally, though, beautiful, right? Because while she imposed that restriction upon society as a whole, she was not willing to forgo her archfey beauty. So there was a certain vanity involved there and a certain hypocrisy. And I was very happy from a role playing angle, the way that story evolved. So I don't know that I have a preference, which is your ultimate question there. And I tend to go about 50-50 between when it comes to extra-planar entities. And in the middle, I tend to enjoy finding some sort of lesser known, like there's a deity of knowledge in nature called Kivlin, that for an adventure I just wrote for the Patreons last month. That was a great little nugget there, because there wasn't a lot about Kivlin. We know that Kivlin is in the Beastlands. It's Kivlin's home plane, and that the followers are, things like noble druids who seek to protect nature and further knowledge at the same time. So that was kind of cool, and so I utilized that to add a little bit. All right, so I think then I have answered your question, Josh. It was really great to hear from you, and I hope you'll drop me a line at whenever you have any other comments or ideas like that. It was a great one. And then a final thank you again to the Kickstarter backers and the Patreons.